For some, the new year is a clean slate. For others, it's a chance to leave last year's scruff and chaos behind. Enter the Performance Pack 5.0 Ultra by Manscaped, your secret weapon for stepping into 2025 sharp, clean, and confident. Don't be the guy who rolls into January looking like you just emerged from hibernation. Let the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra and Weed Whacker 2.0 handle your overgrowth so you can focus on leveling up. Head over to this video sponsor Manscaped and join the 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. Use offer code SKILLUP for 20% off plus free shipping. Gamers, well, it happened. Just like I said it would happen, I upload the very first This Week in Video Games of 2025, and almost at the exact same moment, Nintendo uploads their video revealing the Switch 2. We all knew it would happen, but what you don't know is that I actually had a sneaky suspicion that Nintendo would upload this at 1 AM Sydney time, which is when a lot of stuff goes up because it's convenient for global time zones. That's exactly why I upload when I do. So what I did was, I set the episode live 30 minutes earlier than I usually do, trying to sidestep Nintendo, but sure enough, the big end sniped me. It wasn't enough for them to make me wait a full week to cover this. They had to go that extra little step just to rub it in. In that moment, I felt like I got teabagged by Mario. Absolutely brutal. But yes, the Switch 2 is here, or at least it will be in April, and by that I mean it won't be released, but we'll get another YouTube video about it. Here's the thing, and I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think this is the most underwhelming reveal of a next-gen console maybe ever? Don't get me wrong, I'm sure this is going to be a very successful system with a library of must-play exclusives. I'm not out here saying the Switch 2 looks bad or anything, I'm just saying that the reveal kind of feels like it could have been an email. Surely Nintendo felt compelled to do something at this point. They've been edging us on the Switch 2 for literally years now, and with the Switch sales declining fast, Nintendo needed to throw shareholders a bone. Then there's the leaks, which is probably the wrong word to use since it feels like a veritable flood of information towards the back end of 2024, with third parties revealing mock-ups based on design dimensions that they claim were provided to them by Nintendo. So yeah, Nintendo had to put something out, and this was it, a reveal trailer that just shows off a bigger looking Nintendo Switch. If you haven't caught up on all the details yet, then you're just like the rest of us, because there aren't many details to speak of. Yes, it is bigger. Yes, the Joy-Cons now attach magnetically. Yes, the kickstand is bigger and sturdier, and that's about it. I'm exaggerating a little. I mean, one of the things that was teased was that the Joy-Cons can now be used as a mouse, which is actually kind of cool and going to be fantastic for strategy games. Bet you never imagined you'd be playing Crusader Kings 4 on the Switch, but hey, maybe it's on the cards. The biggest and most salient detail revealed was that the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible for both digital downloads and cartridges, and honestly, that is fantastic news that was anything but a sure thing before this, because Nintendo has made a lot of money this generation reselling us games that we had bought on previous systems. Absolutely love to see Nintendo delivering on this front. I guess the other big detail was that a new Mario Kart game is on the way. Nintendo showed off so little of it that we were unsure if it was just the previous Mario Kart game again, but the fact that 25 players were at the starting line confirmed that this is the new edition, though no further details were provided. And that is it. So on the one hand, it's kind of cool that we finally get to see the Switch 2, but on the other hand, it's kind of a bummer that that's all the Switch 2 is, just a bigger Switch that will no doubt be more powerful. But yeah, this is the company that delivered us the Rumble Pack and the Wii Nunchuck and the Wii U controller and that exercise mat that Olivia Newton-John pumped, and for the Nintendo DS and the Donkey Konga drum kit. The Switch 2 is a much less exciting proposition than any of those things. Hell, even the name is boring, and it's clearly a statement about Nintendo's desire to not repeat the mistakes of the Wii U era. At the same time, you gotta ask, where could Nintendo have gone with their next hardware? I mean, eventually we reach a technology singularity for most things, and it seems like we're getting there for game consoles. That same thing happened to phones. Remember when they all used to have different shapes and sizes and full-size keyboards? And don't even get me started on the Nokia N-Gage, rest in peace. Now all phones look the same, except for the foldables, but let's be real, only your crypto brother-in-law has one of those. For Nintendo, there's really only so many ways you can put a screen in between two controllers, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In fact, don't change anything, not even the name. But with such continuity from one generation to the next, I think it was incumbent on Nintendo to put on a better show than they did, and really talk about the things that do set this device apart from its predecessor. It's a point well made by Nathan Brown, who writes one of my favorite weekly newsletters titled Hit Points. Link below the like button to that one. Here's what he had to say, quote, "The real problem is the hardware itself. Switch 2 is just a bigger, better Switch. It looks like that thing that's already under your TV, on your bedside, or in your work bag." There is a reason that Apple explains just about every facet of each year's new iPhones when it announces them. Without all that context, it would just be showing you a bunch of black rectangles that look to the naked eye the same as the one in your pocket. So it proved here, when you have to pad out your 2-minute video with a little animation of the face buttons being pressed, something is clearly quite amiss with the whole idea, end quote. Now, if this reveal were to be quickly followed up with more information, I might be on board, but Nintendo has confirmed that they won't have anything more to say about the Switch 2 until April of this year, and that is not soon. In 2025 time, that's like 10 years. So this whole thing really does feel like Nintendo just getting something out the door because they feel like they had to rather than because they wanted to. And as sure as I am that the Switch 2 is going to be a really worthwhile machine and we're all going to love it, it's a little tough to get excited about it at this point. Shifting down tempo now, we're finally getting a picture of just how well Dragon Age the Veilguard landed, and sadly, it is not good news for BioWare. So obviously we covered Veilguard extensively last year, but if you missed it, it was the first new entry in the beloved RPG series in over 10 years, and it felt like a real make or break moment for BioWare, given that Mass Effect Andromeda was pretty mid, and Anthem was one of the biggest bedshitters in the history of video games. Veilguard launched to a very strong critical reception, with many outlets and critics giving it 9s and 10s. I felt quite differently about it, but to be perfectly honest, I was actually very happy to be in the minority on this one, because I really did want a big W for BioWare here, and I wanted this game to sell a truckload so the studio could keep the lights on, and we'd all be able to look forward to more Dragon Age games, and more Mass Effect games, and yes, even a Jade Empire 2. That's never going to happen, but it's nice to dream. Sure, plenty of people enjoyed the game, but even many of those people would agree that the writing stood out as being exceptionally poor, and that's the central load-bearing pillar in a Dragon Age game. As a result, the title now sits at 65% on Steam, a far cry from the strong 79 it achieved on OpenCritic. So that's all the background. What went down this week? Well, firstly, the game's director, Corinne Bush, announced she was leaving BioWare after an 18-year career at EA. In an email to staff, here's what she said, quote, "At the heart of it, this was about my own fulfillment. I did what I set out to do at BioWare, that is to come in and help right the ship. I love Dragon Age and BioWare, so the chance to return the game to a proper quality single-player RPG was the privilege of a lifetime," end quote. What she's referring to there is the fact that Veilguard started out as a live service game and then pivoted back to being a single-player game. Some have theorized that that DNA is still in there though, which is maybe why the level design is so weird, why the puzzles are so simple, and why you can't control other characters except in the most basic sense. There's obviously been a huge amount of speculation that Bush was pushed out, but here's the honest truth. We don't know, so there's no point in speculating. I personally take her at her word, and here's what she had to say, quote, "As for me, my departure was voluntary, as I've been presented with an opportunity I couldn't turn down. I don't want to say much more right now, but you can count on it being in the CRPG space and upholding the traditions of great characters," end quote. So that was last week. This week, EA began talking about how well Veilguard sold, and we shouldn't have expected good news because EA have been silent on this topic since the game launched, and when a game sells gangbusters, the first thing the publisher does is crow about the sales numbers. In an investor update, the company revealed that Dragon Age the Veilguard had engaged 1.5 million people since launch, falling short of expectations by 50%. So, a few things to unpack here. Notice they never said how many units Veilguard has sold, choosing instead to use this vague players engaged metric. That's important because there were a bunch of different ways to get your hands on Veilguard. Sure, you could buy it, but you could also pay for a month of EA's subscription service. Their top tier would give you access to the game. EA's cheaper subscription tier had a 5-hour trial for the game too, and I'm going to bet big money that the 1.5 million players engaged includes those people who use the free trial. If we were to compare these results to the previous Dragon Age game, Inquisition, that is a game that sold through 1.14 million units in just its first week. And that was 10 years ago when the games industry was significantly smaller than it is now. We might also compare it to another RPG released in 2024 that was a new entry in a long dormant IP. Dragon's Dogma sold through 2.5 million units in just 11 days, and Veilguard engaged 1.5 million people over the last 3 months. So to be clear, I think this is extremely disappointing news. As I said earlier, I really wanted BioWare to bank a big win here, and clearly that has not happened, and it's going to raise questions about the future of BioWare. I mean, EA boss Andy Wilson and his mates are not known for their charity, and when college football debuts as the highest selling sports game in all of US history, and Veilguard flops like this, it doesn't take much to guess where EA are going to direct their future development budget toward. So far, we've heard nothing about the future of BioWare except EA's public commitment to the studio as they work towards a new Mass Effect game. I really hope that commitment remains steadfast, because missing targets by 50% on a game that you spent 10 years making is the kind of result that's going to make everyone feel pretty nervous. Speaking of missing targets, the misses don't get much bigger than Sony's live service strategy. After spending billions to acquire Bungie, form new studios, and roll out new IPs, Sony's live service push has gone down as one of the most mismanaged misfires in the history of video games. The success of Helldivers 2 is not enough to offset the tremendous losses that Sony has suffered as it's cancelled projects at studios like Insomniac and Naughty Dog, and of course the catastrophic failure of Concord and the accompanying closure of Firewalk Studios. That last one seems to have finally knocked some sense into Sony, because this week, Jason Schreier of Bloomberg broke the story that Sony had cancelled 2 more live service projects, one of them at Bend Studios, the studio behind Days Gone, and the other from Bluepoint, the remaster specialist who most recently remade Demon's Souls. Sony would later go on to confirm the cancellation of both of these projects, while also committing to the future of both studios, saying they'll be put on other projects in the future. I mean, that's good news and all, but what a colossal waste of time, money, and talent to have had these people working on something for so long, only for it all to be tossed in the trash can. Bluepoint in particular, these people could have been remastering Bloodborne, but I guess now they have an opening in their schedule. According to industry insider Jeff Grubb, these cancellations are a direct result of exactly what you'd expect. Quote, "This happened because of Concord. Like, this should be clear. That's what I've been told. Sony has been shell-shocked from Concord and are now going around to every studio and they're reassessing every single project. And if it's a live service project, it has a lot of friction going against it, preventing it from getting a chance to actually come out," end quote. On the one hand, that sucks for studios who have been working hard on something only to maybe see it get canned. On the other hand, good. We saw third-party publishers throw endless amounts of money into the live service bonfire before Sony finally got around to it. It was ruinous for most of them, and now Sony is arriving at the same outcome 3 or 4 years later. This is a publisher who built their empire on successful single-player games, and this generation is honestly going down as like the single worst console generation of all time, owing to how few first-party exclusives we're getting from major publishers. If Sony had directed the 12 teams who were working on live service projects to work on something else, we might have had 12 more great single-player games to play this generation. With Concord's failure reverberating through Sony, hopefully they can get back to what they're good at. And sure, make a few live service bets here or there, absolutely. But don't bet the house on it. Bet the house on Bloodborne, okay? Just give the people what they want. Speaking of giving the people what they want, Xbox did just that last night when they uploaded one of their Developer Direct webinars. And can I just say, I really love this format. It's an extremely in-depth look at a handful of games, going well beyond what a traditional trailer or showcase presentation would provide. It's delivered by the people who made the actual game and are most passionate about it, and it's not interrupted by commercials for gamer credit cards. No disrespect to you, Jeff, you're doing good work. But yeah, it's a fantastic format that Xbox have landed on here, and honestly, I hope that every other publisher just copies it outright, because this is the way to properly showcase a video game. And what a crop of video games it was! It started with a surprise trip to Team Ninja HQ, where they announced that they teamed up with the legendary Platinum Games, and this is what they're working on.
No escape.
More than a decade after the last mainline entry, Ninja Gaiden is back with Ninja Gaiden 4, co-developed by Team Ninja and Platinum Games, and starring a new protagonist, with Ryu playing a pivotal role in the story, whatever the hell that means. This one's got a very futuristic setting, which I'm extremely into, but outside of that, it's always hard to judge a game like this based on trailers alone. They're entirely about how they feel to play, the depth of their combat, the tuning of the encounters, etc. Having the likes of both Team Ninja and Platinum at the helm obviously gives us plenty of reasons to be optimistic, but yeah, this is the sort of game where I'm going to need to go hands-on with it before I can decide how I feel about it. At the end of this block, Team Ninja had one little surprise for us. Ninja Gaiden 2 has been remade in Unreal Engine 5, and the remaster, which is titled Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, is available right now, on Game Pass no less. It delivers the visual uplift you'd expect, as well as additional playable characters, new beginner modes, and plenty more. A lovely surprise to help tide us over while we wait for Ninja Gaiden 4, which arrives sometime Q3 this year. Next stop, the Deep South of Midnight. South of Midnight is the next thing from Compulsion Games. This one was revealed last year at Xbox's Key 3 showcase, and this is our best look at it since then. It looks incredible. Don't believe me? Roll it, Stu.
For South of Midnight, our third-person action-adventure game, the story and characters bring a folkloric Deep South to life. This gave us a chance to explore Southern Gothic themes with a dark fantasy twist. So while our protagonist Hazel is at the forefront of our story, it's the macabre elements and larger-than-life creatures that will leave a mark on her journey and growth.
For me, this one's all about the setting. Its characters, its music, its imagination. Sure, there's some combat stuff in there, but I'm not really going to a game like this for the combat. So long as it isn't terrible, I'm likely going to be more than happy with the rest of the package, which really does look absolutely fantastic. I was honestly just low-key blown away by this, and I'm counting the days until it arrives on April 9th. I was equally blown away by this next deep dive. Take a look.
We've poured our hearts and souls into this game for the past 4 years. That's why we're delighted to announce that Expedition 33 launches on April 24th on Xbox Series X and S and is available day one with Xbox Game Pass.
This is Claire Obscure Expedition 33, very tough name to get out. This was another game revealed last year that's now getting a lot more light shone on it since it launches on April 24th of this year. It's a debut game from a newly formed studio, and they say they were really inspired by the classic JRPGs of yore, wanting to deliver their own modern spin on them. This is clearly drawing plenty of inspiration from Atlas games, with a highly stylized UI and menus that dynamically shift the camera as you interact with them. More broadly, the visuals are entirely their own. I can't say I've ever seen a game that looks quite like this one, and the sheer imagination of these characters and settings is pretty remarkable, especially from a debut team. Again, very excited about this one, and very glad to know that the wait for it won't be too long. And finally, it was time for a deep dive look at the next Doom game, Doom: The Dark Ages. The presentation was spearheaded by id Studio boss Marty Stratton, who in the past made headlines for a Reddit post where he tried to pin a botched Doom Eternal OST launch on the game's composer, the legendary Mick Gordon. Stratton alleged that Gordon didn't meet his obligations to the project, which is why the final OST had to be cobbled together last minute in a crappy, low-quality master that wasn't worth the vinyl it was printed on. The Reddit post generated huge amounts of chatter and essentially ended Mick Gordon's career overnight. 2 years later, Mick Gordon responded with an extremely thorough rebuttal that provided a detailed timeline of events and supporting evidence, as well as a claim that Bethesda offered Gordon a 6-figure sum to settle the matter so long as he didn't speak about the details to try to clear his name. Gordon alleges that he remains unpaid for significant amounts of work that he did whilst working on Doom Eternal, which is why one of the most upvoted comments on the Doom Dark Ages direct YouTube upload is one that reads, quote, "I hope the composer got his pay up front," end quote. And look, I don't claim to know what went down here, right? Most likely the truth is somewhere in the middle, but neither Bethesda, id, or Stratton has ever rebutted any of the substance of Gordon's claims, and it really feels like that sort of thing should happen rather than trying to sweep all of this under the rug, because I think Gordon deserves that. There is no way in hell that we would be as excited about this game as we are today, were it not for Gordon delivering one of the greatest, most iconic, most memorable soundtracks in the history of video games. I think Doom: The Dark Ages looks sick as hell. I'm pumped to play it. I wish the new composers all the best, but I'm certainly going to be keeping Mick Gordon in mind, because you don't get to make a track like BFG Division and then have people suddenly forget you when it's convenient. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, aside from the Switch 2 and the tease of a new Mario Kart game, there wasn't a whole lot, but there were a few interesting things that did catch our eye. First up is War Torn, which looks to mix real-time strategy with roguelike elements in a fantasy setting. Aside from the squad-based RTS stuff, its big focus is on elemental relationships, where water can instantly extinguish fire and heal plants, and fun stuff happens when you mix electricity with water, or fire with tar. That all sounds pretty good. It comes from a new studio called Stray Kite, which was co-founded by Paul Hellquist, best known for being the lead designer on the first Bioshock game. His co-founding partner is a guy called Shavain Patel, who was lead programmer for Age of Empires Online, and you can see where this marriage of systemic gameplay and real-time strategy came about. It sounds cool, and it'll launch into early access first sometime in spring 2025 or around the second quarter of the year for anyone not in the Northern Hemisphere. Why couldn't we just say that? That's so much easier. And just as the seasons steadily change each year, EA steadily releases more sports video games. They made a simple confirmation on social media that yes, EA Sports College Football will get a new iteration sometime mid this year. For any other series, such a quick follow-up might be a surprise, but this is EA we're talking about here, and if College Football is going to debut as the highest-selling sports game of all time in the US, then of course EA are going to pump out another one ASAP. No specific date for this one yet, so Americans, stay tuned. Hey, remember Dino Crisis? You better, because I bring it up like every 2 weeks. Anyway, it seems like Capcom sure doesn't, but a studio called Team Kill Media are trying their hand at making a game just like it called Code Violet, a third-person action horror game that pits you against alien dinosaurs in a space station. PS5 is the only platform announced for this one. Though before you get too excited, it's worth flagging that the developer's last game was called Quantum Error, and it was very, very not good. Like, not good at all. 42 on Open Critic levels of bad, so tread cautiously with this one. Also, Hideki Kamiya was not at all pleased to see the developers referring to this one as a spiritual successor. On Twitter, he said to them, quote, "They say it's a spiritual sequel to Dino Crisis, but are the original staff involved? If so, please write their names properly," end quote. Classic Kamiya really, but yeah, it's always a bit risky to call your game a spiritual successor when you don't have the blessing of the people that made the original. Onto a couple of promising looking tactics games now. The first is Death Howl, which comes from a 3-person indie team called The Outer Zone, and it's published by Frostpunk developer 11-Bit Studios. This one's a really interesting mix. It combines deck building with small-scale turn-based tactics, but there's an emphasis on the human element of the story, which is to be expected given that 11-Bit are involved. It revolves around a grieving mother fighting her way through a really grim interpretation of the spirit world to bring back her dead son. No release date for this one yet, but it's coming to Steam, and there is a free demo right now if you want to try that out. If your preferred flavor of tactics is more of the PS1 or mecha variety, take a look at Kriegsfront Tactics, which was announced for all consoles and PC this week. If you're a fan of Square Enix's Front Mission games and still upset that they fumbled it big time, then you're going to be very interested in this one, since it's unashamedly just trying to be more of that. It's a turn-based mecha tactics RPG. It's set in an alternative 1970s Southeast Asia, and it's being developed by the Indonesian Togi Productions, which is quite surprising. That studio is much better known for their heartfelt narrative games like A Space for the Unbound and Coffee Talk, so this feels like a very big departure for them. Always good to let loose once in a while, I guess. Finally, Ed is making me talk about the lineup for this year's Big Evo fighting game tournament, which was announced last week. Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 are, of course, the two big games returning. Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, which is releasing in April, will make its tournament debut, and Mortal Kombat 1 is making its second appearance despite its shockingly low sign-up pool in its debut year. But the big headline item is the return of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as a main stage event, which is a big deal. This was the very first non-Street Fighter game to be included at EVO. It was the source of so much excitement during its tenure, and it's been absent for a full 15 years. Capcom released that remastered Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection last year, so it seems like the game's popularity is back on the rise. The main event takes place in Las Vegas in August, though EVO will also have tournaments in France and Japan this year as well. Not gonna lie, I don't typically watch EVO, but I will definitely be tuning in to watch those Marvel vs. Capcom events, if only to hear the music. And you know what? Since we mentioned it, we gotta play it. Roll it, Stu.
I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride.
Alright, so what came out last week? Well, let's stretch back a little further and look at some of the games that only just came out as our episode went live last week. Let's start with Airborne Empire, which released on Steam in early access. This is the RPG where you pilot a floating city that you build and fly around, and it mixes city management with open world exploration. It's currently sitting at a very positive rating on Steam, though less than 200 people have reviewed it at the time of writing. Still, 92% of them have given it a thumbs up and have generally had very good things to say. Here's what Steam user Sneak had to say after 23 hours. Quote, "Game feels very polished already. Love that the control scheme instantly makes sense. A few kinks that still need to be addressed. I finished the main quest line in about 20 hours, but there are lots of side quests still open. I don't think the game has a lot of replayability. There seems to be a best way to build your city. Nevertheless, the atmosphere is great," end quote. Moving on to another Sky-themed early access game, Afloat is the new survival game published by Funcom of Conan Exiles fame, and it's set on a bunch of floating islands a la Zelda Skyward Sword. And you also build your home on a floating island ship thingy. Very positive reviews on Steam for this one as well, with just over 550 people logging their thoughts and about 80% of them positive. Taiken132 was a bit down on it after 18 hours, saying, quote, "Overall the game is really fun, but most of the islands are mostly uninteresting, even the ones with loot on them. Going between island to island becomes a chore. The progression is too slow for my liking. Aloft has great potential, but right now it's mostly just empty without much to do," end quote. On the flip side, here's Wayward Will, who has 25 hours in the game and a very different take, remembering that this is still supposed to be a cozy survival game. Quote, "More than most survival crafters, I found myself constantly thinking of new bases I wanted to make purely for aesthetic reasons. The building is fun, quick and easy. It isn't the most powerful building tools ever, but they're hassle-free. It's worth mentioning this game is designed to be relaxing," end quote. On to Tales of Grace Remastered now. This is an updated version of the Tales RPG that was originally released on the Wii in Japan only, and later on the PS3 in the West, and hey, it's doing pretty great for itself, at least for people who love the Tales series. It's got a strong 83 on OpenCritic at the moment, with a few 7 scores being the most critical. RPG Site scored this one 9 out of 10, saying, quote, "Revisiting this game in 2025 has been nothing short of a delight. bursting with an endless supply of charming characters, frenetic combat, and a heartfelt story, Tales of Grace Remastered is a great example of why the series remains beloved, and hopefully a sign of things to come from future re-releases from the series, end quote. Moving on to Jotun Slayer Hordes of Hell, which is a new vampire survivors-like that released in early access. It's got a Nordic theme, a bit more of a roguelike bent, some very nice visuals, and very positive reviews so far, with 93% of folks giving it the thumbs up. Here's what Steam user Strick had to say about it, quote, Jotun Slayer is a good-looking vampire survivors clone with a balanced progression curve that sticks to the basics of the genre and for better or worse, does not surprise with any unique or unexpected mechanics. That being said, Jotun Slayer is a solid game and already offers a fair amount of gameplay, unlockable characters, and weapons for its money, so you can't really go wrong with €9 and might even be positively surprised as early access progresses, end quote. Moving on to this week's big live service bet, Sinduality Echo of Ada is the latest shot in the dark, and it comes from Bandai Namco. This one revolves around extraction gameplay with mechs, and it's got a big anime bend. Big key thing to note here is that it's priced like a premium title and not a free-to-play game. At the time of writing, it's got mixed reviews with 700 people chiming in, about 49% positive at this stage, which is not great, and a lot of the reviews right now are from people who paid for the privilege to play this one in early access too, which should be a bit of a red flag. Key to the complaints right now is the game's economy, a few technical issues around serviceability, and griefing from other players coming to steal all your shit. Here's Kraken Cola, who has 50 hours with this thing already, quote, I actually love this game, and a lot of its issues I'm willing to put up with, but in the state it's currently in, I can't recommend it. The economy needs to be fixed, everything is unreasonably expensive, there's no good ways of making money, and a lot of the content previously available in network tests is seemingly missing from the full release, presumably so they can milk one for more battle pass, end quote. Also love this one from System Senpai, they also have 50 hours clocked, quote, if you come in wanting anime escapism and the playful tedium of a mech-based survival game, look elsewhere, this is not that kind of game. This game isn't escaping anything, it's the same pain and frustration you'll get in real life, and all of your hard work will go towards making lazy idiots rich and wealthy, end quote. Absolutely based. Alrighty, so what's coming out this week? Well, there's a new MMORPG releasing into early access on Friday called The Quinfall, and it's a medieval-themed RPG that reckons it has the world's largest map for an MMO. Okay, fair enough. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, to be honest. It's also boasting universal seasons and a day-night cycle that will affect all players, and a focus on working different professions and taking advantage of the in-game train system to sell your way to other players. Sounds ambitious, sounds like it's going to be pretty buggy at launch. Some mixed impressions coming out of the latest beta they ran, so keep an eye on those reviews next week if you're at all interested. Hey, remember Forspoken, the Square Enix action game from Final Fantasy XV's development team, with the dialogue that was about the cuff and we all kind of cringed at that? That's finally arriving on Xbox this Friday the 24th, 2 years after it debuted on PS5 and PC, where it kind of bombed. Obviously, Square Enix weren't in a huge rush to get this one out the door, but it's coming, and you never know, maybe the Xbox crowd will be the ones that really get into this, where the PS5 crowd and PC crowd just didn't. But I doubt that. We'll see. Kicking off next week is one of the most wishlisted games on all of Steam right now, Space Engineers 2. The first one of these was pretty massive with the sandbox crowd, so no surprises its sequel is as anticipated as it is, but these sorts of follow-ups can really go either way. Think Kerbal Space Program 2, for example. Here you can build wildly ambitious shit in space, explore it with your dodgy ships, and be absolutely intimidated by the insane things other people make. That's out on Monday the 27th on PC, launching into early access. On Tuesday the 28th, we've got The Stone of Madness, which is the new game from the studio who brought you Blasphemous. This one looks really interesting. It's a real-time tactical stealth game in the vein of games like Desperados and Commandos, but it's set in an 18th century Spanish monastery / insane asylum. You control 5 different prisoners of different dispositions to try to explore the mystery of the monastery and stage a jailbreak, while also managing the various skill sets and phobias of the inmates. Stuff like, fear of the dark and aversion to corpses. There's a demo out for this one right now if you want to check it out for yourself. This one's coming to all platforms. Hey, you want to hear Geralt, but in a game about mice? Well, lucky for you, Doug Cockle himself is narrating Tales of Iron 2 Whiskers of Winter, which is also out on Tuesday for all platforms. This one is the 2D action RPG featuring a bunch of gritty medieval mice. The first one was really well received actually, so do give this one a look if you happen to miss that other one. Getting into some bigger games now, and Tuesday the 28th will bring us Eternal Strands. This is the new fantasy action RPG from the Dragon Age director Mike Laidlaw and his new studio Yellow Brick Games. This one is boasting a few big hooks, fighting against big giant enemies you can climb on, a la Shadow of the Colossus, and an elemental reaction system, and the ability to destroy your environment and actually use it against your foes. It looks really impressive, and I personally had a really good time playing it when I played it at Gamescom last year. Here's hoping it sticks the landing. Austin will let you know because he's actually reviewing this one this week, so if you'd like to know the minute that review is live, be sure to subscribe and ding that notification bell. Thank you. Yet another game arriving on the 28th is Virtua Fighter 5 Revo for PC only. This is the remastered version of the Sega 3D fighting game that's still kicking around 20 years later, and this version features upgraded visuals and rollback netcode. This one is being handled by RGG, the Like a Dragon studio, and no doubt Sega is trying to renew interest in the series once more since they've revealed that a new one is in the works last year at the Game Awards. Worth noting that the PS4 release of Virtua Fighter 5 is getting a balance update to put it in line with this version, but not the visual or network upgrade it seems. A couple of ports to cap this section off. Tuesday the 28th will bring us Cruising on Switch, PS5 and Xbox Series consoles. That's a cute roguelike dungeon crawler where you fight for your ingredients and bring them back to serve with some cooking and restaurant management gameplay. And finally, Wayfinder, the live service game that was cut loose by publisher Digital Extremes and then successfully came back as a co-op action RPG. That'll get a release on Xbox Series consoles next week. This is a game that has had a truly remarkable turnaround from mostly negative on Steam at launch to 81% very positive right now, with thousands of reviews singing its praises and a sterling endorsement from Austin himself here on the channel. Definitely take a look at this one if you like your looters offline and in-game spending free. Alright, that's a lot of action games this week, but if you need something a little more thinky, then put this on your radar. I'm surrounded by people who can't stop talking about games like Return of the Obra Dinn and Case of the Golden Idol and Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and the new one they all seem to be playing is The Root Trees Are Dead. It joins the ranks of titles born during a game jam that was so good that they got remade in a bigger and better way. As you'd expect, this one adopts a detective-style logical deduction gameplay of its own, only this time it revolves around genealogy. A rich family has died and a bunch of alleged relatives are vying to make a grab for the inheritance. You need to work out who's telling the truth and build out a complex family tree like an extreme ancestry.com detective. The game has some great gameplay ideas for you to do all of this with, like a note-taking system and a period-accurate PC with a blazing fast 56k modem so you can trawl through the internet for clues. Imagine the keyword searching gameplay of Her Story and you've got an idea of how things flow. If any of those aforementioned games are your jam, then The Root Trees Are Dead is a no-brainer. If you'd like to check it out, you can find a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and some good stuff on the Epic Games Store this week. Right now you can still grab the co-op escape room game Escape Academy, which is a good time with friends, and replacing it this Friday is Behind the Frame. This is a nice little narrative game from Taiwan about a painter with puzzles that have you painting delightful pieces of art. Very cozy, very Ghibli inspired, and with some great hand-drawn animation. Microsoft announced a stack of Xbox Game Pass games to end the month with, and there are some good ones in there. From now until January 31st, there are 5 day one releases arriving, a mix of pleasant surprises and games that definitely feel like Game Pass games. They include Lonely Mountain, Show Riders, Eternal Strands, which we talked about earlier, Orc Must Die Death Trap, Sniper Elite Resistance, and Citizen Sleeper 2, the last one we're particularly excited about actually. A few other editions include Gigantic Rampage Edition and Far Cry New Dawn, and a handful of solid games are making their way down to the standard Game Pass tier. Some chill indies like Flock and Tachia, and some must-plays like Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess, and The Case of the Golden Idol, plenty to keep you occupied there. PlayStation announced all the new additions to their game catalog for extra and premium members this month, and there are some good ones in there too. God of War Ragnarok makes its debut, but I suspect basically everyone who owns a PlayStation already bought that one. Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, is also available and comes highly recommended by Ed. Sinai, Wild Hearts, and Citizen Sleeper are two of the big indies definitely worth checking out on the service. Also, Atlas Fallen is on there, and it might be better now after the game got a massive update that included replacing the main character's voice actor. Ouch. If you're a premium member, you're in luck because the additions to the classic collections this week are Medieval 2 and Indiana Jones and Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings. The PS2 Indiana Jones game you definitely forgot existed, but Sony dredged it up to try to capitalize on the Bethesda game, I guess. Don't look at the Metacritic score for that one. Finally, a couple of good games popping up on Prime Gaming this week, including a gold code for Deus Ex Game of the Year edition, if you need a game where you have to think, and Zombie Army 4 Dead War on the Epic Games Store in case you need a game where you don't have to think. Don't forget, you can still grab games like Bioshock 2 Remastered and SteamWorld Quest if you haven't already. Our feel-good story for the week is one of those increasingly common intersections of politics and video games. For some time now, Elon Musk has been pretending to be good at games. It started with Diablo 4, where his account had gear that was so perfect that it couldn't have possibly been earned by someone who wasn't playing Diablo 4 as a full-time job. Obviously, he was paying someone to do the work for him so that he could then take the credit. But to be fair, that's how he's built his entire career, so why would we expect it to be any different here when it comes to his gamer cred? Speculation mounted when Elon somehow managed to achieve the exact same feat in the newly released Path of Exile, and people only got more suspicious when they saw Elon playing that account live, and it was clear that he had absolutely no fucking clue in hell how that game worked. Despite this, Elon strenuously denied any allegations that he was paying for account boosting, but recently it seems he's abandoned all pretense of that because, as streamer Quinn69 noticed, Elon Musk was apparently attending Trump's inauguration while he was logged into and playing his Path of Exile account.
Elon! How are you there? Wait, how are you in the Sulfurix cabins right now, Elon? Elon, you're in a map right now, level 96, but I can see you there.
Since this, Elon has freely admitted to paying for account boosting in various games, which is of course against terms of service, but something tells me that Elon is unlikely to face any consequences the way the rest of us might. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is a separate social studies lecture. For now, I want to thank you for being a great audience. Apologies that the show was a day later than usual this week, but that's how we do it whenever we have an embargo that drops around the same time as the news show. We like to keep things spaced out a little. Hey, by the way, have you followed us over on Spotify yet? We're now uploading all Skill Up content in video form over on Spotify, and if you're a Spotify premium subscriber, you won't get any mid-roll ads. Just click the link below and hit the follow button over there, and be sure to sling us a 5-star rating when you stop by. We'd appreciate that. Just like we'd appreciate you clicking the like button on this video here on YouTube, and the subscribe button and notification bell if you'd like to come back and do it all again next week. Working on a few things right now, including a Civilization 7 preview and my Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 review, so lots to look forward to. Thanks again for stopping by, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Manscaped. 2025 is a clean slate, so why not start clean shaven, both up here and down there, thanks to the Performance Package 5.0 and this video's sponsor, Manscaped. In this kit is the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the most advanced ball trimmer in the history of the human species. Your body hair will tremble in fear at the sight of it, for it knows it cannot withstand the two interchangeable blades, one of them for skimming off the top and the new foil blade for a closer shave. The hair can try and run and hide, but it will not succeed. For the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra features dual LED spotlights to provide contrast on multiple skin tones. With this sort of illumination, there is nowhere for your wayward hairs to hide. That's not all, since the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra also features 3 length setting combs, plus it's waterproof, making it safe to use in the shower and very easy to clean. The Performance Package 5.0 also includes the nose and ear hair trimming Weed Whacker 2.0, the Crop Soother aftershave lotion, as well as the Crop Preserver anti-chafe ball deodorant. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back. Hell, Manscaped are feeling generous this holidays, and so right now, if you grab the Performance Pack 5.0, you'll also get some Manscaped boxers, very comfy, as well as the Shed 2.0 travel bag. For years now, Manscaped has been a central part of how I keep myself clean and tidy. I've used every bit of kit they put out, except for their beard trimmer, because I actually can't grow a beard, but that kit has always delivered both performance and reliability. I still have the original shaver they sent me like 5 years ago, and it still works absolutely perfectly, though I have upgraded to the Lawnmower 5.0, and it does provide an even closer, smoother shave, while being even easier to clean, maintain, and charge. TLDR, Manscaped stuff rocks, and if you want to grab some for yourself, then visit manscaped.com/skillup and use offer code SKILLUP for 20% off your order plus free shipping. That's manscaped.com/skillup and offer code SKILLUP for 20% off and free shipping. Thanks Manscaped for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.